Yes.
Hi, Clara. Thank you so much for joining Startup Grind's Fireside Chat today. We are very happy and very honored that you could take the time out. RedLocker could take the time out and be with us.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. And of course, I'm happy to make the time as well for it.
Amazing, amazing. So let's get this started. I think from a little bit of past, we met, let's say, a few years ago when you were at a very early stage of building your startup. I still remember that was around 2020, 2021. Maybe COVID was just kicking in, so
Mhm.
that was a different
Mhm.
time. But tell us about yourself and how your background led to the creation and start of this startup, Red Locker in this case.
Yeah, sure, of course. So first of all, I'm turning 25 years old this year. So what sort of my background is, I went to high school back in 2016 to 2019. And I read my program that I did in high school was natural sciences, so a lot of physics and math and stuff. So my plan was always like from the beginning to be an engineer. And that was my sort of my aspiration and goal. And then during final year of high school, in Sweden, you get to during the final year, you get to choose some elective classes where you can basically do like other stuff that is not related to your actual program. So I picked one of those that I picked was entrepreneurship because I've had um, really no experience of entrepreneurship or running a business previously to that. I had no like parents or anyone in my family and stuff who had their own business in that sort of way. So I was really curious, and I was also sort of like wanting to not do all of the classes that I usually did, like another math class or something. I wanted to do something different, and I thought that that could be fun. Um, and then in that class, basically, I met my co-founder, Lisa. Um, and none of us really had any friends in that class since it was an elective course. And we did, she was on a completely different program in high school. So it was a big high school, so we didn't know each other at all. And that was sort of the beginning of our journey. We started discussing the idea and the vision that's now RedLocker today. And yeah, basically from there, this is all I've been doing. So I haven't really done anything else after high school besides this.
Amazing. Great to know your initial interest in engineering, high school, and how you picked up an elective. And I think that's the beautiful thing about life. Sometimes things happen
Yeah,
when you take a step in a different direction. So that opens up possibilities, that opens new doors, and you meet people who you otherwise would have not met
yeah,
had you not taken the elective. So it's an interesting chain of events
yeah.
which is there. But let's talk a little bit about Red Locker.
Mm,
If you could let us know what is the exact problem that you're trying to solve, because that's the first thing we ask startups. What is the
yeah,
big problem you are into the space
yeah.
of solving?
Yeah, sure. So the idea behind the company and the products that we provide, and also the problem that we're trying to solve is something that we ourselves experienced growing up, going into puberty and getting your period. And in school, for example, but also in other sort of public spaces, we quite a lot of times experience the issue when you find yourself having your period and not have access to the products that you need.
Mhm.
And that could be, you forget your products at home, you get your period unexpectedly, or for some other reason, you just don't bring them whenever you need them. So the idea was created from that experience that both me and my co-founder had been in a lot of times, and also the insecurity that you felt, going to school whenever you had your period. Oh, will I, bleed through? Will I not have enough products and stuff? Especially in like a young age. So what we basically solve is we provide dispensers and other sort of solutions for companies, schools, and other public spaces to be able to offer period products for free, but also in a sustainable and accessible way.
Okay, so really interesting. Many of the entrepreneurship based solutions come from a very deep personal experience that you find a problem and you try to see what can I do to solve this. In this case, how big is this problem? Yeah.
Yeah, well, first of all, around half of the population on Earth has their period,
Yeah.
and does experience the, situation where you have to have period products whenever you're in a
Mm-hmm.
public space. I mean, when you're at home, it's another thing because then it's your own responsibility. Um, but in a way, I guess how we view it is that the need for a menstrual product like a tampon or a pad
Mm.
is exactly as basic or on the same basic level as needing toilet paper for someone else. It's
Okay.
just to try to put it into comparison.
Mm.
And yeah, it affects, half of the population. And there's been a lot of studies, or not a lot, but there's been a few studies on how many people or menstruators who actually experience the situation or has at
Mm.
some point experienced the situation where you actually lack products whenever you need them. And it's quite a significant amount. So depending on which study you look at and where that has been
Mm.
evaluated.
But that's a very interesting parallel you draw between toilet papers and menstrual products.
Mm.
Uh, I'm just trying to imagine, is there a toilet which doesn't have a toilet paper? So it's virtually like there is 100% correlation or coexistence
Yeah,
between toilets and toilet paper.
yeah.
What are the barriers you think on the menstrual products? Why was the market before you guys came in and other startups in this area, if they are working,
Mm.
why did it need to wait till 2020?
That's a very good question. I think there are a few answers to it
Mm,
that sort of weighs in together. So first of all, whenever we started RedLocker back in 2018, we of course did a lot of research in the beginning.
mm,
Are there any companies that has some sort of solution, some sort of dispenser? First of all, because what we had to do during that final year or in the entrepreneurship class was basically start a mock-up company, and
okay.
that meant not necessarily doing all the product development and all that stuff. We our initial thought was to find an already existing product and sell that and distribute that. But we had never seen anything in person in real life ourselves. So we started Googling and we couldn't really find anything. There was no company on the European market whatsoever who had some sort of solution for it. And we
Mm-hmm.
found like one company in the States that had some sort of solution for it, but they were not really that established back then.
Mm,
So we basically had to do something from the beginning. And I think, why no one had thought about it before, because, there are big global companies that provides and produces and sells menstrual products, and
mm,
also companies that provides dispensers for other toilet products. So there's
mm,
definitely been, possible for them to also provide something like this. But I think that first of all, there's been historically a big taboo and stigma around menstruation. You've not really
mm,
people who menstruate doesn't really necessarily talk about it in public spaces or in society and as a whole. And that has changed a lot through the years, especially
okay.
like this century where it's been you know it becomes more open and normalized the further we come. And I think that's also one of our experiences quite early
Mm,
ourselves personally, that during when we grew up and when we were in our teens, we saw a lot of topics in this area that was starting to actually get some light and get some attention, both on social media but also in society and other ways. So I think that was of course one of the reasons, and I think that has also sort of contributed to the fact that um, people, I say women, but people who menstruate has always had this issue. They've
mm,
always had to bring their products. And I think with that, they've also gotten used to it, together with the stigma and that you don't really talk about it. So I think that it's just been that way that, uh, there's been a stigma and a taboo, and then that has sort of caused it um, to not, people haven't thought about it. They've just gotten used to always bringing their product, and whenever they forget their products, they have to solve it in some other way. I guess.
Very interesting
So
point.
yeah,
You talk about the taboo. I think that's a very important point. But you also kind of lift another point that it was more like a habit, like
yeah,
the way the market had been running. There were
yeah,
players who were supplying different things in different dispensers in the same space,
yeah,
which is a toilet. There were other products, but nobody thought about complementing that kind of thing to this product category. And the other side is consumers were doing it in a particular way
yeah,
as well. Now, now, trying to understand how does your entire flow work in terms of the business itself? Like, are you collaborating with the product manufacturers, dispenser manufacturers? So, if you could tell us how the journey looks like in
yeah,
terms
for
of
sure.
getting the product into the end consumer's hand.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, we work with a third party manufacturer,
Hmm.
and they are a white label manufacturer, so they only produce their customers' products. So we're the product owner of our all of
Okay.
our dispensers and products. So they produce them, and the development phase was, of course, a joint product. So their engineers and us with our sort of specifications. So they produce it, then they ship it to our warehouse, and from there we
Hmm.
distribute it out to our customers. And
Okay.
the business model in like our general business model is a subscription based one. So basically, our customers rent our dispensers, and then they get monthly or quarterly refills sent out automatically, so that they can refill the dispensers themselves. And that sort of task is usually carried out by the same people that refills the toilet paper and other consumable products in the bathroom and in the office or whatever.
Okay.
Um, yeah,
So
so
which means
that's
you have a difference between who is the end user of the product and who is the customer of the product.
yes,
And how does
yes.
that relationship work? Like more in terms of where is your focus, for example?
So my focus is mostly on the customer or the buyer.
Okay.
So that could be, if you look at it, that could be the company in itself, but it could also be the people that makes the decisions and signs the agreements within the company,
Hmm.
and that's usually, HR or the buying department, procurement department, or something like that. And then, of course, we have our end users, which we
Hmm.
more call our community. And we've always had the balance of had to balance between how we communicate to our customers and our users.
Okay.
And that's been very different. And we have categorized it so different. For example, on social media, we have different channels for our customers so like LinkedIn, for example, is mainly for our customers. And then like Instagram and TikTok is more for our users and our community. And the
Very,
communication and how we sort of brand ourselves is of course different depending on who we talk to.
very interesting to know this duality or dichotomy of thought process or how you're building. Let's go, because you mentioned briefly how this works on the buyer or the customer
Mm.
side. Um, are there also different groups of customers? Like, let's talk about first this side. So, let's say
Yeah,
this, how are your customer sets structured right now?
yeah. So we divide our customers into a few different groups. So we have schools in one group,
Mm-hmm.
and that could also, that could include specific individual schools, but it could also include municipalities because we do a
Okay.
lot of like region municipality agreements where they procure for all of their schools, for example.
Okay.
Um, and then we also have, sports clubs, other sort of youth organizations that could be like activity houses and sort of more cultural municipality
Mm-hmm.
areas and stuff. And then we have companies, and those we also segment into three different groups depending on the size of the company. And we measure the size of the company most often on number of employees because that's
Okay.
how we differentiate how big the customer's potential is for us.
Okay.
Um, and then aside from that, we also have, government agencies and sort of more government companies that has another sort of way of working in terms of procuring these sort of products.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
that's how we basically divide. and then we of course structure them into different industries and stuff more
Okay.
individually in each category, but that's the main structure.
Got it. You're also building like you're also an impact startup because your startup has a direct impact on lives of people, on how they're progressing through their lives as well.
Mm.
Um, Does that help? Like, if you were a traditional startup just selling a business service, like an accounting service, I'm just thinking that you
Yeah.
had a similar audience, like schools, municipalities, maybe an accounting or an educational software or some software that works for sports club as well, for companies large, and as
Mm.
opposed to you have an impact startup.
Yeah.
Does that simplify their decision-making process, or is it still complicated? Like, how difficult is selling to this group of customers and explaining, does it take a lot of energy from you? I'm just trying to understand
Yeah.
how intense is the convincing or conviction formation process?
Well, I think, my experience is that has changed a lot through the
Mhm.
years. It was very different 5 years ago than from what it is now.
Okay.
So when we first started, after we've sort of, went through the development phase of the product and we had something ready to sell, we started, of course, approaching different sort of customers within those different segments because we wanted to
Okay.
go broad whenever we started to get references in different areas and stuff. Um, and then, I mean, the general sort of response initially was, a lot of people didn't really understand.
Okay.
They didn't understand the product. It was a completely new product for basically everyone that we talked to. It was not something that they had thought about before. So they were
Okay.
like, but why should we need this now? Um, there was also some who said, for example, in schools, we had a lot of response that was, we already offer this. And what they mean
Hmm.
by that is they offered it in, the school nurse's office where she perhaps
Uh-huh.
worked 3 times a week, not really having an open, sort of space where you could always come. So depending on the different groups of customers that we approached, there were a few different sort of responses that we generally mostly got.
Hmm.
But it was not easy in the beginning. And there was a lot of contacts that we did that, we had to really convince people as to why they should provide this sort of product. It was also the fact that we were both very young back then. We were in 1920, we
Hmm.
didn't have any previous numbers to show in our company. And we had to, build the seriousness as a supplier, of course, was also something big in the beginning. But then through the years, we've fought a lot. We've been patient that this sort of change and this behavioral change as well in how people perceive menstrual products as an available thing in society. I think as time has gone, that has changed, and a lot of people, if you compare it to now, sees this as an obvious thing because there's been a lot of companies and schools and organizations that has taken the initiative and installed the products, but there's also been a lot of talk about it in the media. So a lot of our customers has gone to media to tell about this sort of initiative. There's been a lot of shares on social media, both LinkedIn and other platforms. So I think now, especially if you talk Sweden, but also it's becoming more in the other Nordic countries. I think now it's become so normalized because
Hmm.
almost all big companies that has over 500 employees has already taken some sort of initiative now. But
Okay.
that has shifted quite a lot. So when we talk to customers who hasn't yet taken this initiative today,
Hmm.
it's usually that they have contacted us for the first in the first place, because we get a lot of companies now reaching out to us rather than we having to reach out to them. And it's not something that we really have to convince people about in the
Okay.
same way at all as it was back then.
Very interesting. And that's very
Mm.
interesting when you're tapping into a new market. I think initially, when you try to, if you're trying to sell a red car in a market of 1,000 people who have always bought a blue car, they would not
Yeah.
understand why red car is needed. So I think
Mm.
it's a lot to do, as you said, about awareness, about initial metrics of success, about team's
Yeah.
experience as well, because startup founders are always in a learning game. Because
Yeah.
you build something from zero, bring it to one, then to 10, then to 20 and 30. So, and then from what I hear you saying, it was a lot of initial outbound related
Yeah,
work that you had to do in terms of
yeah,
building the market, as opposed to now it's becoming an inbound for you
yes,
eventually.
yeah.
Now, what I'm trying to understand, if we stay on this side of the business for one
Mm.
more point as well, is do you think there is a risk of companies doing them themselves rather than through you or through one of your competitions who might be working in this space? Like, do you think this need will reach a generic level, or do you think that you still play a differentiating role, that this a large portion of this will still come to you?
Um, Yeah, I do think that, that there will always be a need for our sort of solution on the market, also because
Mhm.
we have made a sort of quite a unique solution
Okay.
if you compare it to other products that are on the market today.
Okay.
But I think in general, there will probably in the future be a lot of our today potential customers and also
Mhm.
existing customers that perhaps can solve it themselves because whenever we get to that stage that period products are available everywhere, then people don't really see it. So the just to give you a brief of this insight, our dispenser has a locking function. So basically that
Okay.
means that you cannot take in an more products at the same time. So you take a product and then the dispenser is locked for a few minutes before you can take out another one. So that's sort of the initial idea behind the product and the main function as to why there's an incentive that people want to get our products instead of just offering it themselves in a
Okay.
basket or something. Um, and whenever we get to that point where period products are everywhere, people perhaps will not see the same need to you know, take 10 tampons because it's not been offered at the next place you're at. But whenever
Okay.
that's not the case anymore, there will perhaps be some sort of shift in how our products needs to work and look. But I think in especially in big workplaces and also, public spaces, I think there will
Hmm.
always be a need for this sort of solution because
Okay.
we see in large workplaces today people take all sorts of products that have always been accessible.
Yeah.
And I think that that sort of issue will not disappear anytime soon. So just the function and the niche of our dispenser, I think there will always be a need for.
Got it. Got it.
Mm,
Very interesting point, and I like the focus on the word locking there, and I think
yeah.
organizations at scale like 500 plus people company, they're always thinking on the cost on the other side as well. So you have a moat there, you might have
Mm,
a lock there that you have on the market. Let's go to the other side, because you mentioned something very interesting in a passing remark, that for example when we are with the customers it's about LinkedIn, when we are with the end users it's about more Instagram and TikTok and media widgets. What how does the voice of brand change, like on both sides? Like what are you addressing to the customers and what are you trying to address to the community?
Um, so starting with the community, I think that's always been the easiest part for us in some
Okay.
ways because we feel like we talk to ourselves in
Okay.
many ways, or our younger selves. So we've always had an aspiration and a goal to be a voice and be a community for especially young people.
Mm-hmm.
That's always
Mm-hmm.
been something because we were 18 when we started the company and it was something that was experienced growing up
Mm-hmm.
as younger teenagers especially. So we've always had a big focus on reaching schools and other sort of youth organizations. um, with that being said, we started our TikTok back in 2020 when TikTok was very new.
Okay.
And we did that because we wanted to reach the youths of Sweden in that case, because that was our first focus market. Um, and our aspiration and our goal was sort of, well, first of all, to continue and start breaking the taboo and stigma that we
Mm-hmm.
still, experience, and especially I think normalize talking about it with your friends or online or something. We always also wanted to be a platform to spread knowledge about menstruation and the female body and all of that sort of
Mm-hmm.
things, because we ourselves again had experienced a lack of platforms to sort of go to whenever you had questions about something. Um, and then third of all, we wanted to build a grassroots movement of young people who were engaged and driven also about this sort of topic. So we did a
Okay.
lot of content in the beginning when we went out to schools and we talked to students, and a lot of product placement in our videos. And that sort of back in 2020, 2021, that reached a lot of attention
Mm-hmm.
amongst young people. So we got, 500,000 views on some videos and stuff. And the comments were like full of people saying like, oh, please come to my school, please contact my principal and stuff. And what we sort of did from that was we transformed it into actually those students could sort of take this topic further themselves. So we built like a
Mm-hmm.
playbook that they could download from our website. That was sort of materials that so that they could take that further with the student body or student organization or the principal and stuff like that. And I think that's been one of the key factors to our success, especially in the school
Okay.
world. Um, and then if you compare it to, so that's sort of the main things that we lift with our community, getting a space where you can come and be yourself, but also talk about the issues and the topics and everything that you think of growing up or as an adult as well. So we built onto that, and we do a lot of events, both digital ones. We've done like a YouTube series where we talk and lift different sort of topics, but also we do a lot of live events
Okay.
for young people in different sort of on different topics and stuff. Um, and then on our customer side, which is mainly LinkedIn,
Mm.
our main focus is, of course, to talk about what we do for our community, because we know that that's something that a lot of, especially companies, value. That we do a lot of other. We have a lot of focus on that area, which has always been a genuine thing for us. But then we also, of course, lift other sort of aspects as to why you should collaborate and do an
Mm-hmm.
initiative with RedLocker, which is, employer branding, employer, improving your workplace culture and the safety of the workplace and the employees and stuff. And also, lift other sort of positive aspects as to why you should take this sort of initiative. We share a lot of customer references, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
initiatives that customer has done and stuff. So I think
Okay.
that's the main things that
Very
separate them.
interesting. So on one point, there is a lot of how would you say, image and brand building. On the other side, it's a lot of community movement, cause, grassroots, as
Yeah,
you're saying, that those are two different things, and issue building.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so, so very interesting. On the customer side, in terms of what do you think, what would you be your, for example, recommendations to startups which are trying to build a lot of traction around a cause, something over here? What are one or two learnings, or how should they approach that process if they want to build a strong movement around a social impact cause, for example, or a startup?
So I think the first thing that sort of I think was a way of working for us and a success factor was building that sort of community and um, building a community of people who were also inspired and engaged and share the same vision as us. And that's
Okay.
not necessarily today only students. It's also adults that works at some sort of workplace, and they are
Hmm.
so personally driven by this cause and this vision and idea that they themselves want to make that sort of difference and run that sort of topic and question in their organization or in their workplace. So, for example, we've had a lot of situations where a person within a company who is not in a decision-making role, who is not perhaps, even in the right department. We've had like people who works as a middle manager in a logistical in the logistic department of a company that
Hmm.
and but they have been so inspired and driven themselves by this purpose that they have sort of lifted the topic to the right people within the organization and sort of being, our sales rep, but themselves working within that organization. So I think building that sort of community is super important, but
Okay.
also being very clear in your communication, especially if you have a new solution or a new product or a new
Hmm.
service that you want to provide, being very, very clear in the whys. So for example, whenever we started and then during the first few years, we had four whys, which we shared both physically on our products, like we printed them, like why you should have RedLocker and provide menstrual products. It was
Hmm.
four different reasons, which we stuck to. It was in all of our sales presentations, it was on our website. So making that sort of yeah, clear branding and clear communication in the beginning, I think is really important to get people on board, because it's not a change that we can do alone within our
Hmm.
organization. We need other people in other companies or in schools to also be engaged in yeah, making the difference, I think.
No, I think amazing point on those four whys that you're saying. I think the why alignment, whenever you're building something around a higher purpose, there needs to be very strong mission level alignment,
Yeah,
because that
yeah,
mission will move, as you said in like 5 minutes ago, grassroots level momentum.
yeah.
If the mission alignment is not there, this momentum will not build. So,
Mm,
really, really, really interesting point over there. Startups, when we talk about startups, and the majority of the startups are like they're seen as digital hockey sticks. Like
yeah.
that's the traditional way a startup is looked at, and Stockholm and other ecosystems in the world, we are a leading ecosystem. So we are also very strong on digital, as
Mm,
opposed to you building something which is different. So you
yeah.
you have a product, you are trying to connect a product concept, maybe building a supply process or a supply chain altogether, and kind of effecting change in a very interesting way in the entire category. How do you think is that different from building a digital product, for example?
Well, I think it's different in a lot of ways. I mean, we have digital aspects of our company as well in terms of,
Mhm.
not providing a service online in that sense, but having, we have an app, for example, and we also have a website, of course, and stuff.
Okay.
But whenever working with a product, there's of course other challenges. It's not as easy as, just signing up to a new service or
Hmm.
downloading an app, of course. So the process of growing in sales and delivered products is a bit slower, of course. And in our case, it's also um, not something we don't sell our products on a website, for example, because we need to be close to the customer to get them to find the most sustainable solution and setup as possible.
Okay.
So that also slows down the process, I guess, if you want to say that.
Hmm.
Um, but I think, yeah, so and then of course it comes with a lot of other sort of challenges and loops that you have to go through with product testing, product development, changing parts in the product whenever you've actually already started to distribute them to customers, doing a lot of product testing. And that's, of course, something that me and my co-founder had no experience in
Okay.
beforehand. And we trusted the people that we worked with, our suppliers and our manufacturers, a lot in the beginning,
Hmm.
because we had an idea, we had a vision, we had a specification of the product, how we wanted it to look and work, but not in a deeper level than that. So I think, yeah, finding good people to do the product development with, but also of course the
Okay.
manufacturing later on is super important. And that was a challenge for us. I mean, we had no network as to
Okay.
high school students in that sense. So we had to do a lot of Googling. We reached out to companies that could perhaps, be the right once, but they turned out to not be, and then but they referred us to someone else, and then at some point we got in touch with someone who wanted to help us. So yeah, I
But,
think it's slow. It's a slower process, but it's also super fun.
but I think it's true about startups. So I think there'll be as many playbooks of building successful startups as there are startup verticals or startup processes. So there's not no one right solution that fits all, because in any startup, it's learning by doing.
Yeah,
Like, you cannot imagine whatever is there in 3 years ahead. You have to learn each day, and each day will
yeah,
teach you something different. So I think very interesting points over there. Two last questions I had, and one of those would be like, startups are always hungry for money, because you're always trying to build something which is faster than a traditional business will be building, which means the burnout rate will be there in terms of
mm,
how fast the money gets consumed while you are building and acquiring customers, because customers will come later on and that will start reflecting. So the cash is running out. How
yeah.
has your pitching and fundraising journey been in the startup? Any learnings or any interesting points from there?
For sure. I mean, so when we back in 2020,
Mhm.
in the beginning of 2020, we launched our first like pilot products to some pilot customers, and that's also, in I think in the mid of 2020, we started to look for potential investors. And I mean, I guess our journey is a bit different to a lot of other startups because we
Mhm.
actually never really we didn't really go to many pitching events and stuff. We of course pitched our products to potential investors, but then quite immediately, whenever we started to actually look for investors, we got the question if we wanted to be in the Swedish version of Shark Tank.
Mhm.
So they did a remake of that. They hadn't broadcasted it for about 10 years, and then they decided to pick it up again to do a program on it. So before we got that question, we didn't really have the chance or had the time to pitch it to a lot of people. Of course, we did, and we faced a lot of you know challenges in that, being 19 years old, but also getting a lot of questions and people who didn't really understand why the product, for
Mhm.
example, was for free for the user. And people were like, I guess you're missing the payment system in it or something. And of course, being two young women, it's not super easy when it comes to the pitching community and,
Mhm.
and, and
Mhm.
trying to look for investments, in terms of how little of the capital and investments that actually go to women today in Sweden, for
Mhm.
example. Um, so yeah, but so our journey, I guess, is a bit different from a lot of others.
Okay.
We did a few pitches, we did a few meetings, but then we took the opportunity to be in the Shark Tank program, and that led us to actually acquiring all those five investors. And then after that, we did together with that round, we also did took in a few more angel investors.
Okay.
And then we have done a refunding with those same investors. So we've only taken in investors at one point, basically.
Okay. Amazing.
Yeah, yeah,
But I think the highlight that I hear is that the market is tougher if you are female founders.
yeah.
Of course, it's not as easy, so that's totally understandable, and we are trying to work on that from whatever ecosystems that I'm involved in. So,
Mm,
point taken. But I think the key highlight being, again, the visibility worked. Like, in building the business, the community side probably built the awareness or the pressure on the business
yeah.
side to actually pick it as a solution.
Mm,
When you got the recognition on Shark Tank, maybe that triggered a few
yeah,
things. So
yeah,
really interesting to know. Last question would be, coming from 5, 6, 7 years ago, building the startup, and then on Forbes 30 under 30. What does that mean? What kind of feeling it takes, and what does that lead to in terms of your larger goals as a person in the next 5, 10 years?
well, I guess that it's I've always had the challenge. I think both me and my co-founder think the same thing, that we've always had a challenge with actually, stopping
Mm,
and sort of reflecting back on how far we've come and what we've actually experienced. I think that will probably be something that we do whenever we don't work with RedLocker anymore, and we can sort of reflect back on the memories
mm,
and the challenges and the learnings and stuff. And I think, it's been a great journey. I think from the
mm,
very, very beginning, when we first met, it was actually my co-founder, Lisa, who actually pitched the idea to me.
mm,
And I sort of connected with her since I had experienced the issue. And I think that whenever she started thinking about this,
mm,
she always sort of knew that uh, it would become successful. She really, really from earlier than whenever we met and we started building it, she really believed in it. And I think it took me perhaps a little bit longer to start believing as well. But I did quite quickly also really start to believe that this sort of product was something that could come or grow very far, since the need and the customer base was so very large if you look at a
mm,
global scale. Um, so yeah, I think, it's hard to sort of summarize
yeah,
what we've gone through. There's been a lot of challenges, but I think also whenever you run into a problem, you always manage to solve it in some
yeah.
way. And then 6 months after, you've forgotten that you ever experienced that. That's sort of how I think my brain works and a lot of other people's brains work, that you forget about the problems that you've had in the past many times. Um, so yeah, I think that reflecting will be more to on a later date whenever this journey ends for me. But yeah, it's been great. I mean, we've we can see now how big of an impact our company has had, how many people's everyday lives that we have
Hmm.
simplified, made easier. We get that sort of feedback a lot from our community, especially people reaching out daily on a daily basis on Instagram or other platforms saying that, oh, I was in a gas station today and I had my period and I saw your dispenser on the wall and you saved my car ride to my countryside or whatever, or people saying that they really appreciate that our products are in their school or in their workplace and stuff. And I think that also keeps us going, that we can actually see and hear how our change is actually affecting people's lives.
Mm,
Um, and that has always been the biggest motivator, I think. Really believing in the vision and the idea, but also getting that sort of feedback from our community and the users that we're actually making a difference for them. Um, it's great, I think. And Yeah, being recognized in the Forbes 30 under 30 was, of course, always something that you sort of dreamed about whenever you first heard about it,
yeah.
and seeing, that there are not a lot of Swedes, like historically, that has been on the list. There are a few, but it's a very prestigious bunch of people that we share the list with, and it's really a recognition of hard work and the actual impact that we've had, not only in Sweden but also globally, especially in Europe and stuff. Um, so yeah, our continuous journey from here is continuing to enter new markets. We're
Hmm.
already entering, or we have entered quite a lot of markets in Europe
Okay.
and in the Nordics. But continuing that, because here in Scandinavia and the Nordics, we are progressed in a lot of ways more than other countries in these sort of topics. So yeah, I think that, and also continuing to with that normalize actually accessible period products in public spaces. That's sort of the main thing.
Very interesting, and I think you mentioned something very interesting, and that's for our community, which is going to be listening about that as well. That there has to be a very firm and a grounded belief to start with. Because if you have a strong belief, it'll push you to build. When you
Yeah,
build something of meaning, it will generate some impact. That
yeah,
impact will lead to some sort of satisfaction or a higher level of delivery. And then
yeah,
eventually, it is about reflection, like what did you achieve? So very
Yeah.
interesting points there, Clara. Clara, we'll like to thank you on behalf of Startup Grind and Brim, because this talk is being a Startup Grind and Brim collaboration on impact. So we're very thankful for the thoughts that you shared with us and with our community today. And we wish you best of luck in the next journey of building RedLocker, wherever and however or how big that becomes.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. And thanks for the good luck wishes as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a great day. Take care.
Yes, you
Bye-bye.
too. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.